The most dangerous thing that you can do with money is put it into a government-sponsored program. Stick around and we'll tell you why. If you're an investor or want to be an investor and you're looking to create passive income that exceeds your monthly expenses, then this is the podcast for you. Here on the Infinite Wealth Podcast, we combine the philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad along with Nelson Nash's Infinite Banking concept. Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen along with our co-host Anthony Faso. And today we're going to be talking about the retirement trap. Again, we're working our way through Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker. What a great section that we're going to be talking about today. Anthony, I know you're excited.
Well, you got me on the hook. You're bashing some of these government-created plans, which is one of my hobbies. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper in that and talking about retirement in general.
Yeah, me too. So we are on page 66, 67 in Nelson's book. Anthony, do you got a takeaway that you want to kind of tee up here, or you want me to start this thing off?
He starts pretty bold, right? Name a government plan that has been successful. Post office?
DMV?
Social Security? Medicare?
Yeah. We need the theme music for Jeopardy. Exactly. Ooh, I can't think. I'm tapped out.
And you know what I'm also going to throw in there?
What?
Government created plans.
I would agree.
You know, what I found is interesting. Now we're starting to see this next generation, particularly X per se, maybe some of the baby boomers, they're retiring with the full use of traditional or let's say typical. I wouldn't say they're traditional. Typical financial planning, maxing out these government created plans. And what's happening is it's not working as they had thought. They're not able to pull out as much money as they thought. They're getting hit with more taxes than they thought. And they're going to have to go back to work.
I agree. Government sponsored programs is like your accounting career. Mediocre at best.
Dang.
I think that's, I agree 100% with a lot of the realization is people are starting to realize that, hey man, I don't have all these advantages that even my parents would have had, right? My parents had low taxes, low inflation, rising stock market. This generation is not going to have that working for them. And so they're realizing kind of the same stuff that I realized when I was younger is that, man, this isn't going to work out the way that I'm anticipating it. And so we have a lot of young clients that are calling in looking for options, and infinite banking is a great option for somebody that's looking.
Why is that?
Control. When you outsource your money, right? One is you're giving up control over it. But number two is you have no desire, right, from our last episode to make sure that this thing's going to work for you. When you take control of your finances, you realize, hey, it's on me. I'm the one that has got to make this thing work. And so there is a responsibility of yourself to go out there and learn how to create or how to play this game of creating income. And I think that's the biggest difference. When you outsource your money to somebody else is you usually sit back and just hope and pray that it turns out for you.
Well said, Cam.
Thanks. And in fact, that's kind of what I highlighted here on page 66. In the second paragraph in the bottom left, what he's highlighting is he's talking about government. And what he says is the $10,000 that you put into your pension plan last year was not your money, and you know it. Man, I couldn't tell you the number of times that I've had conversations with individuals about the amount of money that's in their retirement plans. And I'll ask them how much money you have, what's the balance, this and that. And they go, well, I got 100,000. Exactly. Right. So then you got to walk them through and be like, do you really have 100? Yeah, that's my balance. That's what I got. What type of account is it? 401k. So it's a deferred account. Yeah. Okay. So you've got money in there. And part of that money, those contributions are taxes that you've just chosen not to pay yet. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So if you have $100,000 balance, how much do you think roughly is going to be paid in taxes? Well, then you got to walk them through the exercise. Is that, roughly in a 30% tax bracket, 70,000 is going to be yours. 30,000 is going to be taxes that you've just chosen not to pay yet. And then the next question is I'll propose is I'll ask him, where do you think taxes are going? Anthony, where do you think taxes are going, up or down?
Way up.
Way up, right? I agree. I think they're going to go up. I think they're going to go way up. And so if that scenario rings true today, now I've got 70, the IRS has 30. If rates go up now 30, let's say they go up from 30 to 35%. Now the IRS that I owe taxes is going to have 35% or 35,000, and I've only got 65,000. How much control did we have over that scenario?
Zero.
Zero, right? And people, they know this, but they don't know it, right? So until you walk them through this example, they go, oh, wow, yeah, I guess you're right. And everybody knows taxes are going to go up, but they're not taking any action to avoid this scenario. And so that's one of the scenarios that we'll walk somebody through. And again, I think I like the way that he put that is that was not your money and you know it.
Well, you know what he also talked about, and this has happened, hasn't happened in the United States at this point, where some governments went after some of the wealthy's retirement accounts to help pay for other people. And he puts that in there. Honestly, I do think that that is a concern, but we're not ones to really incite fear. I think I don't know how realistic it is. I do think that is possible. But and what people may say, well, Cam, I got a Roth IRA, man. I don't have to worry about taxes. Do you know when you take money out of your Roth IRA, you still get a 1099?
I do. A better than mediocre CPA told me that. That would be you.
Why would, if it's so tax free, why do they issue a 1099? I mean, that the box in there will, under the tax amount, will hopefully say 0. But to me, it's always getting, well, why does the government need to know all this information if this is supposedly tax free? And I've said this on the podcast before. Your Roth IRAs will become taxable, and they're going to start doing it with people, the ultra wealthy. Like everything the government does, they start really high. They only going to affect these greedy, rich people, but then eventually that will expand. I mean, a prime example, when they started the income tax form, you only had to pay tax if your income was over $250,000. Now that was 1913, right? Creep. I don't know what the value of that is now, but that is much more than 250. I'm sure it's more than in the millions in today's dollars. So everybody's okay. Yeah, it's only gonna affect those greedy, wealthy people. Name a person you know who is not paying income tax, and they're not making the $1 million. And I'll bet many of them aren't even making the 250 that what it started with. But they're still paying tax on it, and also the government is going to come after this plan. Right. They had tried to talk about limits of anything over $3 million a few years ago. And even if you're really looking deep in part of the Inflation Reduction Act, very incorrect name, right? We talk about names are important. Okay. Look at all the things that are in there. How much of it directly are going to lower inflation? Very little. But you know what was in the first draft? Is they were going to limit what you could invest in with your 401k or your IRA. Because it's possible that you can get what's called a self-directed IRA, meaning you don't have to have it at Fidelity or one of these large firms. You can get it and have an LLC, and that LLC can invest in rental properties, or there's very few things that assets you cannot invest in. They were going to put limits on you investing in real estate, LLCs, and apartment complexes in there. So we are giving up control, and you don't need to. Right? There are many do you know, Cameron, there was a time that they didn't have 401ks.
What?
Yeah. Or even IRAs.
What?
Right. Somehow people got by. Now, I will
What?
say back then, oftentimes that there were pensions that would help, but now those pensions are dried up. The 401k is not a good answer. You really, to get the financial dreams that you are capable of accomplishing, you need to have some control of your assets. And when we put it in a government created plan, then we need to follow the government created rules.
Well said. The thought of control and that deferred taxes or just having taxes in those accounts that you haven't paid yet. When you have that burden or that tax liability that's hanging over you, they have control over you, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Taxes are a when, not an if, right? It's not when you pay them or if you pay them, it's when. So your choice is to pay those now today. And I'll tell you what, guys, go through this exercise. Think about what it would look like or what it would feel like if you took the money that you had, paid the taxes, got the IRS completely out of your scenario, and you had all the money that was left over to yourself. What could you go do with it, and what would that feel like? The idea that I get is I feel like the government is a mobster, right? As long as they have those taxes that you owe them, as they've got
Hmm.
some sort of control over you,
Hmm.
they can pull the strings and manipulate you along the way. I personally don't like that feeling, so not gonna do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let me say one more piece for it. But when give me an example when the tax impact is should be the sole reason while you're making a transaction.
Never.
No, taxes are a big impact. It's a big piece of the puzzle, but it's not the entire piece, right? We do need to take that into account. And I would say outside of the employer match, um, I can't think of advantage of having a government controlled plan outside of some of the tax advantages.
Hmm.
And if taxes are a concern of yours, and be honest, they should. And if you don't want to lose that tax deduction, there's ways that you can do something I would argue that is even better. Like we had a couple podcasts ago, we had the a cost segregation guy. What was his name?
Yona Weiss.
Yeah, where there right now is ability for with the cost segregation, which in essence means you can accelerate a lot of the depreciation in the first year as opposed to spreading it out. But it's very possible that what this can happen is you can deduct about the equivalent of your down payment, which means you can your rental property, if you buy a rental property, you can deduct that. And so you're kind of getting the same thing. If you put that money in a 401k, you get that tax deduction, but then you're going to have to pay taxes at the highest rate, which is your marginal rate when you pull it out. Or you could still get that tax deduction and invest in real estate. And then when you do sell that, you are going to pay at the lowest rate, which is long term capital gains rate. And in addition, if it's very possible that you just when you sell that property you roll it into another one and including the gains and then you roll it into another one, very possible you could continue to defer these gains, and then upon your death you get what's called a step up in basis, which means when you pass that down to the next generation, their cost basis or their value is what it is today. So if they turn around and sell it the day after you pass, no no taxes are paid. And again, what we really need to focus on is not just saving for this rainy day. What we challenge you to do is to be able to live the life you want now. And we don't need to wait till we're in our 60s to be able to quote unquote retire. What we challenge people to do is to find something that they're passionate about and start doing it now. Where maybe if they enjoy it, it's not going to feel as as much work. But and one way to do that, or a great way to do that, is start creating some passive income. Right. Once you get your passive income being greater than your monthly expenses, that's true financial freedom. then you work because you want to, not because you have to. Or maybe you volunteer, or you just do whatever in the heck you want to do. Okay. But what we're trying to teach people, let's not focus on, well, let's store this money, give up control till we're old. Let's get in control of our money. Let's put it to work in assets that are creating some cash flow, so you can accomplish the things that you want to do while the kids are still young and while you are still young. And that reminds me of this is a good segue.
Yeah.
I know we're talking any more about the plans.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're rolling. I'm just
Another
standing here.
piece Nelson talked about is we shouldn't retire.
Yeah.
Right. And part of what we're saying is find something that you enjoy doing where it does not feel like work. But in addition, we were not made to retire. Now, Cameron, do you know, and I know you know this, so you can, I'm setting you up, or help to set me up. What are one of the definitions of retirement?
To put out to pasture, something like
yeah,
that. Take out of service.
To put out of service.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be taken out of service. Like that just sounds terrible. We think it's important for us to continue to work. Cameron, do you know how many times the word retirement is in the Bible?
I do.
How many?
Zero.
And we had Rabbi Lappin on our podcast a while back, and this is what I learned in his book. I think it was the 10 Commandments of Business, or thou shalt prosper. What he went in there to talk about, the word retirement was not in the Hebrew language. That is something that Moses did not just end up just kicking back, right? People were continuing to work. And there was a point where there wasn't typically assets where we could use for retirement, but also let's just put the dollars aside, right? When we're 60s or 70s years old, we have built up a lot of wisdom. And I think we need to share that to others, whether you're doing it on a volunteer basis or you're getting paid for it. But you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and we need to pass it on to the next generation. And or throw even some, you will live longer the longer you work.
What? Tell me more.
Oregon State, along with Colorado State, did a study, and they followed about 3,000 people starting when they were 50 years old. They noticed the majority of them retired when they were 65. But what they noticed, the people that retired 1 year later at 66 had 11% less mortality rate. And what was also interesting as I was researching for this episode, Social Security actually had a similar study as well, that the people who retired early did not live as long as people who continued to work. And one little thing that people may look and consider that is, well, maybe the people that are healthy can physically work longer, and the ones that don't, that are unhealthy, need to retire. So maybe it is a little weighted. But what was interesting, when they looked at the people that were unhealthy in this original study I talked about, the people that were unhealthy, their mortality, the less mortality rate was not 11% less, it was 9% less. So it was a little bit less, but still not a lot. And I think what the point of this is, it's good and healthy for us to have purpose, to stay involved, to be able to be social. So we don't want to just sit in our couch and watch Family Feud. We need to be out, sharing our wisdom, being social and being active. So that's what we're encouraging people to do. And I feel that's what Nelson is saying as well. But in order to do that, we need to start creating some passive income. And if you're looking for some ways to do that, we are here to help. There will be a link in the show notes for a discovery call. Get a call with Cameron and I. We can answer some questions about infinite banking. Is it for you? Is it not? Or maybe we can give you some ideas so you don't need to retire and you can work because you want to, not because you have to.
Well said, man.
That was a long rant. Sorry.
That was good. I think I just stood here for about 20 minutes. But man, you were rolling, so I was just kind of standing out of the way. As they say in the streets, keep cooking, man. What I'll add there is Nelson. Man, I look at kind of the way that Nelson does this. This is like 2 pages of what he covers, but man, he covers some ideas that you could go very deep into, and I think that's what you were doing there. For me, when I was reading this section, there's 2 things that came up. One, the first one on page 66 is at the bottom there. He's talking about how everything was frozen during the war. I remember the first time I read this book, I'm like,
what?
Dude, you can't freeze economy, you can't freeze stuff, right? That's crazy. This is wild. You can't do that. And little did you know, you can do that. Right? So that one hits home much more now than it used to. And so for me, it's that job, right? When we're going and we're working for somebody else, is again, we don't have control over that. So for me, I read that as having a job versus what he's talking about is develop a skill set that you can take and go anywhere. And then he also ties this into Ed Deming, which he's referenced previously in this book. But this Ed Deming was a business consultant who taught the Japanese the idea of quality. And when I think of Japanese kind of work, and you think of like craftsmanship and workmanship. And so I think that's where he's going. And that's my takeaway is that, man, don't go out there and just have a job, right? I know everybody's got to work, but man, find something that you're passionate about and find a way to create income doing that. And you could live the rest of your life, a very happy life, chasing your passion and live as long as you wanted to, being able to do that. So that was kind of my takeaway. There's a big difference between kind of working a job versus developing a skill set and having that passion for quality. Man, on page 67, I started reading the 14 points that were kind of Ed Deming's highlights as far as what he would take from businesses, man. And to be honest, I started reading these and I had a flashback of when I used to work for UPS. So that was my job when I was growing up. I graduated high school and I immediately went to work for UPS, and I would work preload. And what that is you'd go in at 2:00 in the morning and you would load the trucks to go deliver from 2 to probably 8:30. And then the drivers come in, they take them. Anyways, long story short, the 13th point that he has there is remove barriers to pride of workmanship. And what I would tell you is that my job in that building was to take boxes off of the conveyor belt and then fill up the truck and put it in a certain order so that it would allow the driver to make timely stops throughout the day. Man, I would go there. It was packed. Boxes would come out. You'd get all this stuff. And because it was union, right, nothing gets set, but they would make you take breaks. And I would work during my break, and that used to piss everybody off. And so I would do that, and the foreman would come over and just give it to me, yell at me, right? It would escalate over time. I'm like, dude, he's like, you gotta take a break. I'm not taking a break, man. I gotta get my work done. He's like, no, you gotta take 10-minute break. I'm like, I'm not taking a break, right? Is I gotta get this stuff done. And because I knew that if I took a break, all the stuff, all the crap loading would fall onto the driver for that day, and he'd have a terrible day. And so this idea of kind of taking pride in your work, that was like the second instance in which I knew that was not a place that I could stay for any extended period of time. And so again, I think that's the idea of taking pride in what you do and going out there, being an entrepreneur, and then putting your passion forth into something that you can get excited about.
Well done, Cameron.
Thanks, man. Awesome. You ready to wrap this up?
Yeah.
All right. Guys, we just talked about the retirement trap. As Nelson says, you want to avoid all such programs like the plague. Guys, we want to retain control over our finances, and we want to make sure that it's up to us, the success that we derive kind of in our financial future. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Take care.
Make it a fantastic day.
If you like this video, I know you'll like this one. And if you want to learn how investors use infinite banking to increase their returns and lower their taxes, check this out. And if you have some questions and want to see if infinite banking is for you, hop on a discovery call with us. Link for that will be in the description.